a gaming series that spanned multiple decades with multiple developers and publishers, while also being a great way to entice people to follow the sport, and even giving you the opportunity to drive the cars that you've seen on television and or in real life. And with this series being around for decades, it has given us some greatest hits that are still fondly remembered and played to this day, and other games that, let's just say, aren't the greatest. Some people may enjoy it, but others have their own opinions, rightfully so. And this is a NASCAR Iceberg. Not just any NASCAR Iceberg, a NASCAR gaming Iceberg. So there has been multiple NASCAR Iceberg videos out there on YouTube or anywhere on the internet, but this video is going to consist of an iceberg that I made myself, just focusing on the gaming side of the sport. There are still going to be mentions of things that happen in real life and on the sport itself, but it's mostly going to be about the gaming side. And in case if you don't know how an iceberg works, basically you have an iceberg and you have multiple topics around it. And it will range from the top, which is mostly consisting of topics that everyone knows or majority of the people know. And it will go down to more obscure, less known, or sometimes dark pieces of information that not everybody knows or nobody knows. Before the video starts, I want to apologize in advance for any mistakes that I have made in the iceberg video. There may be some misinformation that I'm going to be sharing, and feel free to correct me in the comments. And if there's a topic that I haven't mentioned in the iceberg, feel free to add it in the comments and describe it what it is. With that out of the way, enjoy the video.
Boogity, boogity, boogity! Let's go great American racing, boys and girls!
EA Sports. It's in the game.
Everyone knows Electronic Arts. EA, for better or for worse. And we all, or most of us, have played at least one game from them, whether if it's a sports game or from their other franchises. They had their term with NASCAR between 1997 to 2009, with a total of 18 games in their catalog, 4 of them being spin-offs. They've given us some of the greatest games, specifically the Thunder series, 2003 and 2004, that is still liked by the community to this day, and they've also given us one of the worst NASCAR games ever, NASCAR 08. NASCAR 09 and Kart Racing were their 2 final games, based off an ongoing season and in general. After that, they never renewed their NASCAR license as part of budget cuts and poor sales from their latest games. And it's a good thing seeing how EA treats their other franchises nowadays. Papyrus Design Group was a developing studio founded in 1987 that first started making racing games for the PC with Indianapolis 500, the simulation. They were also the first studio to make NASCAR games based on an ongoing season with NASCAR Racing in 1994. In total, Papyrus has developed 9 NASCAR games from 1994 to 2003. One game having a concept port, majority of the games and versions being published by Sierra Entertainment. One being solely based of a lower division, one taking place in the year 1970, and 3 of them having their own expansion packs. NR 2003, NASCAR Racing 2003 season became Papyrus's last NASCAR game before EA bought the exclusive license in September of 2003. Papyrus then later closed its doors the following year. Motorsport Games was founded in 2018, and currently they are the current holders of the NASCAR license to make games after acquiring 704 games in the span from 2018 to 2020. They also have exclusive rights to make games for other racing divisions, and even acquired Studio 397 with R Factor 2. To summarize Motorsport Games as a studio, NASCAR 21 Edition, Ponzi schemes, controversies, anything that you can almost think of that it's just illegal for a company to do under the sun. So far, Motorsport Games have published 4 NASCAR games, 2 with 704 Games listed as a developer, with 1 being a Switch port, 2 that Motorsport Games had developed and published. Originally named Duesenberry Martin Racing, 704 Games was founded in 2015 and acquired the license to make NASCAR games that same year from New Technics. They also revived the NASCAR Heat series that was developed by Monster Games from 2000 and 2002. 704 Games have published and made a total of 10 games. 2 games having 704 listed as a developer for Motorsport Games, 3 mobile games, 4 games developed by Monster Games, and 2 by Eutechnics. Eutechnyx, originally named Zeppelin Games, was founded in 1987 and have developed games for various consoles and even on different genres, but they are most known for making various racing games since they were called Eutechnyx in 1996, including, games like these. Eutechnyx is also one of a few companies that have published and or developed NASCAR games that are not based in the United States, being based from England. They have acquired the NASCAR license sometime in 2010 and have made a total of 7 games since. 2 of them being published by Activision, 1 by Deep Silver, 1 by Duesenberry Martin Racing that became as 704 Games later on, 3 of them by themselves with 2 of them being mobile games, with one of those mobile games eventually becoming part of 704 Games. As far as it's known, in 2023, some web searches state that Eutechnyx is still around, but it's also possible that they have quietly shut down sometime between 2015 and 2016, which is around that time after NASCAR 15 release, as they haven't released anything or made anything since. Monster Games was founded in 1996 with majority of their library consisting of racing games. They have given us games like Dirt to Daytona, which today is regarded as one of the best NASCAR games of all time. Monster Games was also another victim to the EA exclusive license deal that happened in 2003. Unlike Papyrus, they were busy making other games that include a game for the Test Drive series and various Nintendo games until 2016. After 14 years, 704 Games tasked Monster Games to make a NASCAR game, which was Heat Evolution, and at the time it was regarded as one of the worst games, or if not the worst NASCAR game of all time, until 21 Ignition took that title over. They have improved since, and overall this is the only studio to have more than one term of making NASCAR games, pre and post exclusivity deal, with a total of 7 games under their belt, 1 being published by Hasbro Interactive, 2 by Infogrames, and the rest by 704 Games. They were never listed as a developer for Heat 5, as it is a copy and paste of Heat 4, and after that they have made other type of racing games that include the SRX and dirt racing games and are now owned by iRacing. Released between February to March in 2003 in multiple regions of the world, NR 2003, also known as NASCAR Racing 2003 season, was Papyrus's final NASCAR game. To a lot of people, it's not regarded as one of the greatest NASCAR games of all time, but it is regarded as a racing simulator and one of the greatest as well. There have been NASCAR games released on PC before and after NR 2003 that have a modding community, but not as big as NR 2003. You'll pretty much find a mod for almost everything in NR 2003 that range from driver rosters before and after 2003, lower NASCAR divisions, other racing divisions, racetracks, fantasy, other games, or from around the world. NR 2003 to some people is considered to be untouchable as both a game and a simulator. But there is a simulator that is just a bit better than NR 2003 when it comes to experience and competition, and that is iRacing, being one of the best simulators out there that even professional race car drivers use it. Here's something to note about iRacing. Aside from being the most expensive simulator available as it is subscription based, and you also gotta buy cars or tracks separately, its origins date back to 2004. Just after Papyrus shut down, David Kamer formed First LLC, which bought the assets and source code of NR 2003, and then used them in the span of 4 years to develop iRacing. The simulator has gone through a lot of updates since 2008 and is going to turn 15 years old this year. This is also perfect to not just professionals, but also to anyone who wants to race competitively in communities and for some real money. October 30th, 2022, history was made in the Xfinity 500 at Martinsville Speedway when Ross Chastain performed the move that we know as the Hail Melon. He did this move just to get a one last chance to get into the Final Four for the championship, which he eventually finished second the following week at Phoenix. The move itself is just basically wall riding, which is something that anyone can do, or you may have done it before in not just NASCAR games, but also in other racing games, regardless of your arcade, sim, or simcade. Results may vary though. Chastain said on an interview after the race that he did this move in NASCAR 2005 Chase for the Cup on the GameCube back in the day. I tried to do this on the PS2 and it's either I'm doing it wrong or results are not the same. Multiple drivers have attempted this move in the past, even on lower divisions, but Ross is the only person to execute this perfectly at a track that has little to no banking on the corners. So perfect, in fact, that this move is now banned from 2023 and onwards. April 12, 2020, an iRacing event made headlines for the wrong reasons. Monza Madness was an event hosted by Landon Castle, along with Garrett Smithley on iRacing, featuring drivers from different types of motorsports, including NASCAR, former and active, to race around in the Monza Oval for fun. The event was live streamed on both Twitch and YouTube, with Twitch featuring different driver perspectives from multiple drivers that participated in the event. What this event was most remembered for was Kyle Larson dropping the N-word on public chat because he thought he was on a private chat. The consequences that happened after was Kyle losing his ride at Chip Ganassi Racing, all of his sponsors, and getting suspended by NASCAR indefinitely. Kyle has redeemed himself after this event. He dominated the dirt racing scene and still does to this day. Got a ride with Hendrick Motorsports in 2021 and won the championship in the same year. But we can say that he basically played Daytona to dirt with that word. NASCAR games are backwards compatible with various consoles. All PS1 games are backwards compatible with the PS2 and PS3. All PS2 games are backwards compatible with select PS3 models. And all PS4 games are backwards compatible with the PS5. Select original Xbox games are backwards compatible with the Xbox 360, with an official Microsoft hard drive. And all Xbox One games are backwards compatible with Series XS consoles. Any game that was released on the GameCube can be played on the Wii, and same thing if any game that was released on the Wii can be played on the Wii U. There have been multiple drivers that had their sponsors to be censored, or on some rare occasions, not included in the game. All for mainly being able to maintain a game rating that is suitable for general audiences. Other times it could be for licensing issues. This also goes for the cigarette company Winston, which was the title sponsor from 1971 to 2003. All Winston logos for games released between NASCAR Racing 1994 to Thunder 2004 were referred or changed to as the Cup Series, before we officially call it the Cup Series in 2020. Though Thunder 2003 and 2004 still reference Winston as I mentioned.
Welcome to today's NASCAR Winston Cup Series event, the EA Sports 500. Joe Moore and Barney Hall coming to you live from the Mecca of Motorsports, Lowe's Motor Speedway, for today's NASCAR Winston Cup race.
The Busch Series also got the same censorship treatment on all games that feature drivers from that division as fillers, to the whole division feature from Chase for the Cup to NASCAR 08.
The NASCAR Busch Series.
McMurray moved up to Winston Cup after having an impressive year in the Busch Series in 2002.
However, censorship became less restrictive from NASCAR 15 to present day. At least with alcohol sponsors, you can actually drive the same actual schemes that you see in real life of drivers that have alcohol like Miller Lite or Busch on the car, as long as you verify that your account is over the age of 21.
6 to go. Keep her steady, buddy. Put her on the high side.
iRacing has and had multiple racing leagues, and the Coca-Cola Series is the highest form of esports for NASCAR. The Coca-Cola Series was founded in 2010 and has also gone through different names. The league consists of 40 of the best sim racers around the world to compete for money and to become champion. You can tune in to the series on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook when they go live, and even watch older races on the official NASCAR YouTube channel. The NASCAR Heat Pro League was a esports league mainly made for consoles that was short-lived from 2019 to 2021, with NASCAR Heat 3, 4, and 5 being the games that were used for the 2 existing seasons of the series that cross over each other. What I mean is that the majority of the first season, for example, was a NASCAR Heat 3, with the last few races being transitioned to Heat 4, and the same scenario from Heat 4 to 5. The eNASCAR Pro Invitational League was another racing league that lasted for 2 seasons, but this one was on iRacing. Originally, it was supposed to be a one-race deal to have some form of racing to get through the 2020 pandemic, but then it became a success that it turned into a 7-race season that was not just in FS1 after it became a success, but also was broadcasted on Fox and on the Fox Sports app. The whole point of the series was to have all active and even some retired NASCAR drivers to race against each other for fun during the 2020 pandemic until racing picked up again in May. There was also a 2021 season that was supposed to have 10 races, but it ultimately got cancelled after the 5th race, and the series folded afterwards. What the exclusive licenses or exclusivity deal is what grants a publisher and or developer the ability to be the only one or ones to make games for a certain franchise or sport. Like EA with Madden, and they were the first to do it with NASCAR in 2003. Once EA's license expired in 2009, Technics got it in 2010 that was supposed to expire in 2019, but ultimately gave it up to 704 Games in 2015. The deal is supposed to expire in 2029, but instead of 704 Games holding the deal, it's now Motorsport Games, as 704 became part of Motorsport Games. And now the exclusivity deal is in limbo more or less as to how Motorsport Games is handling the franchise now. And it's a matter of time whether they could lose the license or NASCAR may pull out. It's best to see what happens next. Various NASCAR games had included lower divisions, mainly the Xfinity and Truck Series, as for more content and drivers and schemes than just having the Cup Series. The first game to do this was NASCAR Racing 2 with the Busch Grand National Series in the form of an expansion pack. Racing 1999 edition was the first to include multiple divisions in the base game. Dirt to Daytona was the first console game to include more than one division with the Cup Series, Trucks, Modifieds, and the Weekly Series. EA became the first to include lower divisions consistently from Chase for the Cup to NASCAR 09. All games had the top 3 divisions, with Modifieds appearing in all but the HD versions of 08 and 09, and as well as NASCAR Sim Racing. It wasn't until NASCAR Heat 2 where lower divisions returned for the first time after a 9-year hiatus with the Trucks and Xfinity Series, and a Fantasy Dirt Series made its debut in NASCAR Heat 3, and all of these lasted until NASCAR Heat 5, being the most recent game to have lower divisions. Cars from legendary, now and eventually Hall of Famer drivers have appeared in NASCAR in the form of unlockables or DLC. By cars, I also mean, and in most cases, their paint schemes are in the game, as no game officially has included classic or older cars with the respective scheme as seen in real life. Beyond the real racetracks that the Cup Series and lower divisions race in real life, developers create fantasy tracks that are made up of fictional tracks that are original or a different layout or version of an existing track. And it ranges from different types of tracks: road courses, rovals, short tracks, speedways, super speedways, street courses, dirt tracks, nighttime for tracks that don't have lights, tracks that have either existed at one point in real life or have been added into the schedule but are now considered fantasy under a different name, and stadium tracks. Heck, you can say in a way that the Dodge Raceway Stadium and any form of Chicago tracks made by the EA predicted the future. NASCAR has been featured in other racing games that don't have the sport as a core element, especially with the exclusive license in hand by one publisher or developer. Obviously, iRacing has had NASCAR since the beginning, but this is mostly on games that people can actually afford, if you know what I mean. Forza has included base stock cars in Motorsport 3 and 4 with the Gen 4 cars. Motorsport 6 as DLC and Motorsport 7 included the Gen 6, but with actual paint schemes raced in the 2016-17 seasons. Gran Turismo 5 has included various paint schemes from various drivers from both the 2010 and 2011 seasons, with both versions of the COT. Gran Turismo 6 included the same cars with Gen 6 as well at the time. And there has also been other racing games that feature their own versions of stock cars that are either parody or completely not licensed from NASCAR or from any race team in real life. Fantasy drivers are made up drivers that mostly serve as field fillers whenever developers were not able to get certain drivers that competed part or full-time in their respective divisions in the games. A lot of these fantasy driver names can be from people that worked on the games, while others may just be random. The Allies and Rivals system was introduced in Thunder 2004 and never seen again since the PS2 version of NASCAR 09, at least to the extent of what EA made. How it works is basically the AI will react to your driving. Driving aggressively or intimidating them will make them return the favor to you and attempt to wreck you if they're below -60, or below enough to do something. When it comes to intimidating, you're just basically giving your opponent dirty air to make them get out of your way. Driving cleanly or just share drafting with them will increase their level to become your ally. And if it's high enough, they will let you pass and race cleanly with you. We all know the man, we all know his story, and we all know his legacy before and after he left this world. And we definitely know what happened on that day on February 18, 2001. Tragedy aside, Dale was supposed to be in 3 NASCAR games that were released in 2001. He only appeared in 1 of them. And NASCAR Racing 4 was the last game to include the Intimidator while he was still alive. For Heat 2002, Monster Games was asked by the Earnhardt family to remove Dale to be playable in the game, but he can still be found in the Beat to Heat challenges in the PS2 version. He is nowhere to be seen on the Xbox version. The same situation went for Thunder 2002, and both games have their own tribute to the Men in Black. And for the EA game specifically, they added Dale as a playable driver that you can unlock as a legendary driver from Thunder 2003 to NASCAR 07. Back in April of 2022, it was announced that there wouldn't be a NASCAR 22 due to how 21 Edition is and exists. So instead, Motorsport Games decided to release the 2022 roster, schedule, and the Gen 7 cars as an updated expansion for free along with paid DLC for extra paid schemes. There is a NASCAR 22 called NASCAR Rivals, but that is a Nintendo Switch only game, and it was easier for Motorsport Games to do as they only had to do is just copy and paste the Heat assets into a new game instead of working from the ground up, and compress as much as possible for a console that is not as powerful as its competition. A 2022 expansion was announced for Heat 5, but it's now overdue as to 2023, so it's safe to say we're not going to get it at all for either 2022 or 2023. And then they got the damn nerve to say that it's coming out in days. In days that it came out on June 22nd of 2023. Yeah, it came out 8 months after when it was first announced. 6 to 8 months after when it was supposed to be released. And you're looking at it right now. Yeah. I spent $10 just so you don't have to. And this is exactly what you're looking at. Imagine releasing a 2022 roster update for a game that came out in 2020 in 2023. NASCAR, I'm gonna need you to revoke their license and distribute a new license. Motorsport Games tripping at this point. And I want to say you're already doing that, but it's not the same thing with how they're doing it, especially if they can't include real-life drivers and teams in the game. Oh yeah, this is Game Mill Entertainment, by the way. They also made Nickelodeon Kart Racers, Street Outlaws, and even the NHRA game. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I'm just gonna let you keep watching the Iceberg video. Too many things were going on during the editing of this video, so yeah. This feature has been available in NASCAR 06, 07, PS2 versions of 08 and 09, and what the total team control abilities are. These give commands that you can do and work with your teammates for any race team that has 2 to 5 cars. The abilities are 8 of them, and they are work with me, follow, block, swap, drop back, move, hold, and pit now. Work with me makes a teammate get in front of you and be able to draft them, and even share draft them. Follow makes a teammate to get behind you and draft with you. Block makes your teammate to block any cars that are behind you, and even block cars that are behind them. Swap is the most popular out of the 8, and it allows you to swap from one car to another. Drop back makes your teammate to move over and let you pass. Move makes your teammate to move high or low on the racetrack and get out of your way. Hold makes your teammate to keep their current position in the track, and pit now will make your teammate to pit at their earliest convenience. What this is a ticket voucher that was included in retail versions of NASCAR Heat 2, 3, and 4 and digital versions of Heat 3 and 4. What it did, it basically either gave you a free race ticket or $50 off to a race ticket at any SMI-owned track events. And then from Heat 3 and 4, independent tracks were included like Indianapolis, Dover, before SMI bought them, and Pocono. There isn't a true definitive answer as to why they stopped doing the ticket vouchers in Heat 5, but I have a few speculations as to why they did. The deal that SMI and 704 Games had, along with other tracks, expired after Heat 4, and 704 either didn't want to renew it or they just couldn't renew it, even after Motorsport Games acquired them. COVID happened, and it just wouldn't make any sense to print out ticket vouchers for events that are either canceled or fans are not allowed on the track or there are limited seats, or all of the reasons. How the ticket vouchers worked were basically like this. You have to go to a certain website and input a promo code that was included in your copy of the game. Once the promo code has been inserted, you will have a $50 coupon to use. And with that, you can either get a free race ticket or $50 off to a race ticket of your choice, depending on the price. And it could only be utilized once for any event at any of the top 3 series between September and the summer of the following year.
This is NASCAR 98, talking Rusty Wallace, Sterling Marlin.
9-4.
What do you think?
Come on, these guys aren't athletes.
Not athletes. These guys bench press 3,400 pounds. They wear fire suits instead of shoulder pads. So, Mr. Baby on board, next time you redline your minivan at 55, if someone wins and everyone else loses, it's a sport. Any real questions, call 1-888-MY-HOUSE, because I'm dancing with 700 horses down Victory Lane. NASCAR 98, the ultimate judge. EA Sports. It's in the game.
Got the leader. Stay on his back bumper. Just 5 to go. Clear all around. Take care of that car.
The game 2013 was released on July 24, 2013, and it was developed and published by Eutechnyx. Not only this was the first NASCAR game to be released on PC since EA's NASCAR Sim Racing at the time, but this was also the first NASCAR game to be released on PC on Steam. The game itself is basically Inside Line, a PC port of Inside Line with just the 2013 content, roster, Generation 6 cars, everything that was new for 2013 for this version of the game. That was released as downloadable content also on the console version of Inside Line that's no longer accessible today. The game has been delisted from Steam between March and May of 2015, but there's still 2 ways of getting the game today. One way involves going to a website that sells a game key or code for the game 2013 like Amazon, activate it on Steam, and download it from there. The second is, if you know, you know. NR Thunder is a NASCAR-style arcade game created by IDK Player and a team of developers that is free to play on Roblox. And it doesn't matter what system do you have to play the game on, either on PC, mobile, Xbox One, or Series XS consoles. And the game does get constant updates as well over time, like new tracks, paint schemes, older cars, and more. NASCAR has had various mobile games released throughout the years. The most popular among these is NASCAR Heat Mobile, which was a game released on April 25, 2017 by 704 Games, and this game gets constantly updated throughout the years to coincide with the season that it's on. NASCAR Rush was also another mobile game released by 704 Games in 2018 that's basically an endless racer. What I mean is that this is one of those mobile games that you may have played before where you have an endless level and all you have to do is not crash and get the highest score as you can. Unless if you want to try other methods that I do not recommend, the game has already been delisted from the App Store and on Google Play for an amount of years now. Another game that has been delisted for a long time is NASCAR Redline. There's also another game called NASCAR Manager, but I'm going to be treating both as one game since they're both essentially the same thing. But what they both have in common that Eutechnyx made for these games is that they're both strategy based, meaning you're the crew chief, or the manager in this instance, making calls, decisions, and even strategies to pit. Hence why you don't actually drive or even race in this game, but there are instances during races where you will have QuickTime events where you will have to do things like getting up to speed on race starts or avoiding accidents. There's also games that don't have NASCAR as a core element but still have the sport in it, like Real Racing 3, and then there is the typical mobile games that you would expect. There has also been 2 NASCAR games that were released on consoles to also have mobile ports, those being NASCAR 07 and 09. Not every NASCAR game has included every driver that has competed either full-time or part-time from NASCAR Racing 94 to today for one reason or another. I'm not going to mention every driver ever that has been missing in every NASCAR game, but I'm going to mention some notable ones that you have noticed that they were never included in the games. Carl Edwards, NASCAR 07 and 08, had a deal with another company to use his likeness and image for his own video game. Kyle Larson, NASCAR Heat 5. We already know what happened. Jeremy Mayfield, Chase for the Cup. There was a dispute of Jeremy against EA that he was going to be the cover athlete for Chase for the Cup until EA changed their minds and used Harvick instead. Clint Boyer, NASCAR 07, the Cup Series. He still appeared in the Busch Series, and I don't know exactly if it was because of sponsorship issues with Jack Daniels or it was really that difficult to censor a liquor brand compared to what they were already doing with Budweiser and Miller Lite at the time. Manufacturer presence in NASCAR games hasn't always been consistent, as some games have excluded them for licensing reasons. No game from Electronic Arts featured manufacturer representation from NASCAR 98 to NASCAR Rumble. Other than the PC version of NASCAR 2000, they officially started to feature manufacturers from NASCAR 2001 to Chase for the Cup 2005. This is also where EA started to not add manufacturers into their games again, only starting with the Truck Series. Then eventually it expanded to the Car of Tomorrow and NASCAR 08 to every division to be manufacturerless in NASCAR 09. And yes, NASCAR kart racing does count being manufacturerless as well. Almost every game that Papyrus has made has featured manufacturers, the outliers being NASCAR Racing 1999 edition and NASCAR Racing 3 with its expansions. This also includes the standalone Craftsman Truck Series game. Monster Games also never featured manufacturers in their games, specifically their first term that consisted of Heat 2000, Heat 2002, and Dirt to Daytona. With the exception of NASCAR Unleashed, every NASCAR game from the game 2011 to today has always had manufacturer logos, no matter who has had the exclusive rights to make games. Older games have included TV broadcasters commentating moves that the player makes and even the AI make, and mention some facts every now and then.
As a safety precaution, a restrictor plate is required for the largest tracks such as Talladega. This plate is mounted between the carburetor and the intake manifold to limit the amount of fuel and air mixture to the engine. This reduces airflow, lowers engine revolutions and horsepower, therefore lowering the car's top speed. The number 88 car is in second place.
Whoa, little contact! Eventually this scaled back to pre-race and post-race segments with MRN commentators and some TV broadcasters.
MRN is here at the Great Southern Tradition, the annual Southern 500 here at the Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina.
EA Sports welcomes you to NASCAR Nextel Cup Series short track racing as you've never seen it before. Maitland, Florida is the site for this extraordinary race as the stars of NASCAR get set to take on this track located inside of a football stadium.
All professional sports, only NASCAR begins with its biggest event. Welcome to Fox Sports coverage of the Daytona 500.
And Thunder 2004 is the only game to include an actual track announcer commentating on the drop of the green flag, cautions, going to pit road no matter if green or yellow, and on the final lap.
I just had a chance to talk to the crew chief, and he said this will definitely be a 4-tire stop for this car. They hope to get 4 tires on it, get him back out there on the racetrack, and back into contention. 1 lap to go. The white flag waves, and we're on our final circuit around the racetrack. The race is for the win. It's so tough to win in the series. Who has enough? Who will make it back to the checkered flag?
The
reasons why this feature was scaled back significantly over time are because, realistically, you would just be hearing your crew chief and your spotter anyway, and it's hard to predict every possible move made by you and by the AI when the field consists of 30 plus or sometimes 40 plus cars depending on the game. Or other times could be that companies don't have the budget for it, or they're just lazy to implement it. Introduced in Thunder 2003, Thunder plates are unlockables for players to collect. These vary from paint schemes, fantasy tracks, legendary drivers, fantasy drivers, drivers from lower divisions, and other types of unlockables that you can get by completing challenges or events in different game modes, or winning races in veteran difficulty or higher, or with cheat codes if you know which ones to use. I should also mention that from Thunder 2003 to Chase for the Cup 2005, they were called Thunder plates, and from 06 to the PS2 version of 09, they were called Chase plates. From Thunder 2003 to NASCAR 06, instead of doing a normal game intro startup as seen in other games or have no intro at all aside from the famous EA Sports It's in the Game intro, EA made different short videos featuring different people, varying from drivers to pit crew members and other types of people saying the famous EA Sports It's in the Game catchphrase differently. And a different video will be played every time when you boot up any game from Thunder 2003 to NASCAR 06. There has been a few spin-off games throughout the years, majority of them coming from EA. You have various mobile games like NASCAR Redline Manager and even NASCAR Rush that I previously mentioned, but this is more of console games that people actually may have played in the past, like NASCAR Rumble, Unleashed, Kart Racing. For NASCAR Rumble, think of it like Mario Kart, with power-ups, and with NASCAR drivers in it. Basically what it is. So is Unleashed, but Unleashed is executed differently compared to what NASCAR Rumble did. And then there's Kart Racing. It was good for what it was for being a Wii only game, but it's like your typical kart racer out there. There was also another game made by the EA that was released back in 1999, and that was NASCAR Road Racing. It was released in May 26 of 1999, and it's considered a spin-off given that it has NASCAR, but the tracks are only road courses, and all of them are fantasy. This has been seen in other sports game franchises, and it's no different with NASCAR when a driver featured as the cover athlete for a game set to release during the season they're having a terrible season compared to what they had previously, or something has had happened to them during that season. Examples include Kevin Harvick with Chase for the Cup 2005, Jeff Gordon in NASCAR 06 and 09, Carl Edwards in Heat Evolution, but the one that takes the cake is Elliott Sadler in NASCAR 07. When thinking of a NASCAR arcade machine, you might be thinking of Daytona USA, at least the original if you ever played it or even seen it in an arcade to this day after its release in 1994, or similarly to any other iteration or sequel that has came after the original. But there's also been other officially licensed NASCAR arcade machines that you may or may not have played or heard about before. The first of these was NASCAR Arcade, also known as NASCAR Rubbin Racing, released in 2000 and published by Sega with permission of EA. At the time, EA had a license to be the only ones to make console NASCAR games, and since they did not support the Dreamcast, they gave permission to Sega to make a coin-only arcade machine, and this was it. Then in 2007, EA Sports NASCAR Racing was created, but instead of being published and distributed by Electronic Arts, it was instead by Global VR, though EA Tiburon still developed the game. The original version of NASCAR Racing had the 2006 season, and in 2009 it was updated to have the Gen 5 car and of course no manufacturers, also being based on the 2008 season. Then in 2010, NASCAR Team Racing released, though it was just only published and distributed by Global VR. EA had nothing to do with this since this was after their NASCAR license expired. Only seen on the 6th generation games from Thunder 2003 to 09, when making a pit stop in a regular race, career mode, or season mode, a pit crew member at random will tend to make a mistake, which can cost you time in pitting longer than you should and also possible to lose track position. This is also more frequent for pit crew members with low stats in career mode.
Leader only has about a second on you. That was the halfway mark. Plenty of time left. Just worry about hitting your mark.
Majority of NASCAR games have a custom paint booth feature that allows you to create your own paint schemes. You can also pick any number of your choosing, but not every game allows you to pick any single or double digit numbers. And this is where the triple digit numbers come in. Obviously, NASCAR doesn't let any race teams use triple digit numbers anymore in real life, but this was a way for developers and publishers to get around any licensing or leasing conflicts with any race teams that are actually running any numbers from 00 to 09 and 0 to 99. Licensing issues is mostly a big reason as to why some tracks were missing in NASCAR games. Notable examples include Daytona International Speedway being missing in literally every NASCAR game before Heat 2000, as Sega and Daytona had an exclusive deal together at the time for Daytona USA. Pocono Raceway was also missing in Chase for the Cup 2005, which is why in career and season mode the highest amount of races you can do is 34 instead of 36. If you're not doing a custom schedule. Along with Pocono, Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Chicagoland Speedway never made an appearance in the original Heat series. Kansas Speedway did make an appearance in Dirt to Daytona, but not in Heat 2002. This is a glitch that it's in Heat Evolution and Heat 2 that you can spam the pause button back and forth and then get a burster speed no matter who you're driving with and what track you're on. The glitch was also present in NASCAR Heat 3, but it has since been patched a few weeks after its release. These are vehicles that are seen from Thunder 2002 to NASCAR 06 that you can unlock and drive them. Thunder 2002, 2003, and 2004 feature the Pontiac Grand Prix pace car. Chase for the Cup 2005 is the first and only NASCAR game to have actual production vehicles from Chevrolet, Ford, and Dodge. It also includes a Daytona prototype race car as well. And NASCAR 06 features a UPS truck. You're not tripping. Let me say this again. You're not tripping, and this is exactly what you're looking at with your own eyes. Just like the commercials from the 2000s, you're actually racing the truck. I should also mention that none of these vehicles have their own unique stats. To unlock these vehicles, production vehicles, Daytona prototype, and UPS truck can be unlocked by getting enough skill points and purchasing the plates for them, or just simply enter in a cheat code that unlocks them immediately. For both pace cars and Thunder 2003 and 4, you have to actually unlock them. You can also just get a 100% save file, but to actually unlock them, for Thunder 2004 you have to complete a certain amount of lightning challenges to be able to get the Grand Prix pace car. Thunder 2003, you're better off in getting a 100% save file if you don't want to actually unlock every Thunder plate and get that one last out of the 170 plus, or test your luck and see if you can get it throughout your time playing the game. For Thunder 2002, just simply enter Buster Alton and create a driver and you immediately unlock the pace car. This was a campaign that Eutechnics and Activision did for the game Inside Line to let fans vote their favorite driver to be the cover athlete for the game. And obviously, Dale Jr. won given his fan base and he was the most popular driver at the time. The campaign returned for NASCAR 14, and instead of Activision being the publisher, it was Deep Silver. Much like Inside Line, fans will be taken to a different website to vote for their favorite driver. And after over 700,000 votes were casted, Tony Stewart ended up being the cover athlete for NASCAR 14, with a 69% vote victory over Jeff Gordon. Nice. For both the 2016 and 17 All-Star races, 7 of 4 games held a contest to see which select Toyota drivers will be the highest placing finisher to become the cover athlete for Heat Evolution and Heat 2 respectively. Carl Edwards became the cover athlete for Heat Evolution by finishing 4th in the All-Star race, highest among the other Toyota drivers eligible for the cover, and Kyle Busch became the cover athlete for Heat 2, though for 2017, fans were given the opportunity to vote for their favorite Toyota driver to be eligible to compete for the contest. Among the 4 selected Toyota drivers, Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch were the top vote getters, and the cover athlete was decided to see who will finish the highest among the 2 on stage 2 of the All-Star race. Kyle finished 3rd in that stage. Out of all of the NASCAR games that have been released thus far, NASCAR Heat 3 is so far the only game to have an E10 Plus rating. And it has that rating because of lyrics of some of the songs in the game. There have been a few NASCAR games, mainly from EA, that feature a different cover athlete that is not seen in the United States, but is seen in other regions in the world, like Europe. Exhibition races consist of the All-Star Race and the Clash, also known as the Shootout. Not every game features them, but the ones that they do, you can play them as standalone after you unlock them for single player, or you can play them in the career mode and get the full 38-week experience. Nearly every NASCAR game from 5th to 7th generation consoles feature cheat codes, some that enhance gameplay, others that give you unlockables, or extra things. But nothing compares to what Dirt to Daytona has in terms of enhancing the gameplay experience. Heat 2002 has its own set of similar cheat codes, but there's a list that you can choose from in Dirt to Daytona that you can do. There are two ways to get access to any of these cheat unlockables. One way is to get the necessary points that you need to unlock a certain cheat code, or all of them, that involves beating the Beat to Heat challenges, Pro Trainer, and even doing some checklist objectives for every track for every division in the game. The other is to simply input a cheat code at the start menu screen and get instant access to all of the cheat codes. The unlockables are mini cars, front wheel drive, monster cars, super draft, hornball, AI Vengeance, insane race car, oh dear, horn motor, and hardcore physics. Mini cars make every car, including yours, smaller except for the wheels, regardless of what division you're racing on. Front wheel drive just basically switches the drivetrain from rear wheel drive to front wheel drive. Monster cars just increase the suspension of every car that's racing in the game. Super draft makes drafting in this game overpowered that lets you reach insane top speeds. Results are very effective in Daytona and Talladega. Hornball involves pressing up on the D-pad to shoot a solid ball at other drivers. AI Vengeance is basically when you hit another driver, the AI will immediately react to your actions. And it's always on site after one hit, unlike the Allies and Rivals system from Thunder 2004 and onwards, depending how hard you hit your opponents to be mad at you. Insane Race Car has inverted controls to accelerate and go in reverse, and you can also press up on the D-pad to jump. This is what Oh Dear is. Horn Mortar is basically the same as Hornball, but more powerful. You press up on the D-pad to activate it. Hardcore physics just basically makes the game a bit more realistic. You can also input more than one cheat code for a race session, but there are some cheat codes that are incompatible with each other that you can't use simultaneously. Majority of us know, or at least have seen, Mr. Clean as a cleaning product. Aside from sponsoring a few drivers between 2004 and 2005 and in the games with some fantasy drivers, they have appeared more than just a sponsor for Chase for the Cup 2005 and NASCAR 06. Not only they have their own racetrack, which is just basically a reskin of Rockingham Speedway in a Hawaiian setting, but they also, and only in NASCAR 2005 Chase for the Cup, have a pit crew. An entire pit crew dressed as Mr. Clean. The title sponsor for the Cup Series between 2017 to 2019 was the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. Monster is an energy drink that is owned by Coca-Cola. During this time, Hendrick Motorsports still had a deal with PepsiCo, a deal that began since 1997 and had drivers to be sponsored by Pepsi and by their other products. And this became a conflicting issue in using the Cup Series logo, seeing that one race team has a deal with one rival company while the other basically is sponsoring the entire series, at least with one of their brands. So the compromise was that Hendrick Motorsports can still have the Monster Energy Cup Series logo on the cars, but not on anything outside of racing, like merchandise, diecast, and even in games that lasted from Heat 2 to Heat 4. This also includes NASCAR games that were released on mobile and any other racing game that feature NASCAR but not as a core element, but also still feature any driver from Hendrick Motorsports.
Feel the power. You're on the edge. You're racing head-to-head against NASCAR's best drivers. Oh yeah, this is Heat, NASCAR Heat, pushing your PlayStation 2 into overdrive. Rusty Wallace says it's the best NASCAR game ever. The only game where NASCAR drivers dare you to compete. It challenges they actually faced. They designed it. Now you're racing it on PlayStation 2. Oh yeah, this is Heat, NASCAR Heat, rated E for everyone.
Clear right. Ready to go.
On NASCAR games that feature split screen, mainly from EA, and if either player 1, 2, 3, or 4 are falling behind from one another, they will be able to catch up with insane speeds that basically looks like what the AI is with rubber banding. And it's really effective when it comes to tracks like Daytona and Talladega. But it is truly insane when you do a race in Tiburon Super Speedway and one of you fall behind, and it will get to the point that you're going to be grenading a lot of engines throughout the way just to catch up. And this is all thanks to a setting that you can turn on or off for multiplayer speeds. This is a theory that I came up with some developers making their first NASCAR game for the first time ever, or first time for a console generation being a failure. This all begins with NASCAR 08. Not EA's first NASCAR game ever, but it is the first to be in high definition for 7th generation consoles. And this is basically what led to EA's credibility of making NASCAR games just crumble down. Then came Technics' first NASCAR game with the game 2011, and the game was considered pretty bad. Then 5 years later came Monster Games with their second attempt of making NASCAR games after a long hiatus with Heat Evolution, being the first NASCAR game for 8th generation consoles. And obviously this game was considered to be not one of the worst, but the worst NASCAR game of all time, until that title got taken over by 21 Ignition. NASCAR 09 has an ordinary paint booth that you may have seen in other previous EA Sports NASCAR games. But it also had a different type of paint booth that allowed you to create custom templates. The way that this worked, you had to go to a website to be able to download a template and use either paint.net or Photoshop to create your own paint scheme. Once you've created your paint scheme, you have to save your template as a .eds file and then upload it back to the website. And if you have an EA account that it's linked to your gaming persona or being your account for PlayStation or Xbox, you can download those templates directly from the game. Excluding a few things and a few steps, creating templates here is the same as seen in other games like NR 2003 that people do to this day. Creating templates wasn't just limited to the Cup series, as the Truck series and Nationwide series also had the ability to have custom templates. As far as from what I could find, you weren't able to easily download other people's templates through the EA Sports website, so you had to do it through other methods to get those templates and be able to upload them into the game. People have been able to create custom template liveries since the game's launch up until the servers were shut down in August of 2011. Almost every NASCAR game that feature career and season modes have the ability to simulate, in which you have the ability to skip over an event that you do not want to do, or in some cases multiple events or the entire season. But what is interesting about simulating, for the amount of seasons that you're allowed to do, you will get some pretty interesting stats and results along the way per race and even per season, that can vary from drivers that you normally wouldn't expect to compete to actually be competitive and even win some races and potentially a championship or more. And then drivers that you expect to compete winning not just an absurd amount of races but also championships too. And along the way, some drivers may retire, and especially if they win 8 championships. This is a method that I found from the 54 car that allows you to go inside or even outside out of bounds of a racetrack in NASCAR Thunder 2004. To be able to do this, you have to do this on split screen with 2 or more players and push one car at a certain weak spot of each track, which all of them, most of them I should say, have a certain weak spot that allows you to go outside of the track or inside of the track. The most that you will be able to find at most tracks is just some leftover props that normally you wouldn't be able to see or even find. And tracks that allow you to go into the infield, and if you stay in the infield for as much as you like, away from the racing surface, and when you decide to come back, you will be able to start posting some serious hot laps at every track that allow you to do this. One thing that I should add is that you can also try this on every NASCAR game that has been released after Thunder 2004 on 6th generation consoles, and you can also do this on Thunder 2003 to a certain extent. This is the PS1 intro for Thunder 2002, though the thing about this intro, it's using PlayStation 2 footage instead of PS1 footage. It's unknown exactly why PS2 gameplay is shown for the PS1 version of Thunder 2002, but I can have a few reasons to speculate. This could have been a way for EA to entice people to buy a PlayStation 2 and get the PS2 version of Thunder 2002 instead over the version they're playing right now, or this was originally going to be the PS2 intro for Thunder 2002 until it got changed into the one that we know today. If you ever wonder why Dave Blaney never appeared in NASCAR Thunder 2003 and 4, it's because of his sponsor, Jasper. Jasper is a company that remanufactures engines and transmissions, but what is important about them is that they had a deal with Papyrus that provided them with data for their games. Engine data to be specific, and also setup notes to help make the physics better for both NR 2002 and 3. And both games have dedicated Jasper setups for each track in those games. As far as to why Dave Blaney still appeared in Dirt to Daytona, I do not know. There are NASCAR games that feature victory lane celebrations whenever you win a race on single player, career mode, or season mode, and even when winning the championship as well. However, given that this sport is male dominated, you will find more male drivers celebrating wins than female drivers, in games specifically. That's not to say that female drivers don't feature a celebration cutscene at all, but it's just rare for anybody to see them unless they play as them, which majority of us don't really play as a female driver. And there's other times where they don't feature a cutscene at all, like some fantasy drivers. Takeoff is a song by Sky Adams that was featured in NASCAR 14. However, this song isn't available for you to stream on places like Apple Music or Spotify or wherever you listen to your music. But I do have a video that if you want to check it out that has the song in its entirety, beginning to end with no background noise or anything. During pre-race show broadcasts in the early 2000s from NBC and TNT, there will be these Thunder segments featuring the latest game from EA to demonstrate how to drive the track that the Cup Series was racing at the time. All of these segments were narrated by the late Benny Parsons, and the games that had the spotlight were Thunder 2002 and 2003. They never brought back the segments in 2003 for Thunder 2004, but there was one race that they showed Thunder 2004 on TV, and that was the EA Sports 500. Not to demonstrate how to drive the track, but more of a showdown between Benny Parsons and Wally Dallenbach. Not necessarily called Thunder segments, but it's the same thing as Thunder segments. And in 2007, ESPN showed a glimpse of NASCAR 08, just showcasing how to drive around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There might be more footage like this for other races they broadcasted, but as far as I could find, this is the only one. And if you had DirecTV as your cable provider in 2008 and had access to NASCAR Hot Pass, and specifically looking at Jeff Gordon, you may have seen this footage of NASCAR 09 of going around Daytona in the 2008 Coke 0400. And this is the only one that I could find. It's unknown exactly if TNT or ESPN did something like this with NASCAR 09 or Hot Pass had more, but it's just hard to find on YouTube. Some NASCAR games feature old configurations or layouts of some real-life tracks that were being reconfigured as the games were being developed. Examples include Atlanta Motor Speedway, Sonoma Raceway, Homestead Miami Speedway, and the Charlotte Roval. NASCAR 98 is centered on the 1997 season, and it features the Atlanta Motor Speedway layout from 1960 to 1996, despite the track being reconfigured to the quad oval shape that we know today for 1997 onwards. The quad oval layout for Atlanta was being reconfigured while NASCAR 98 was still in development. Given the game released in September 1997, NASCAR didn't race in the quad oval until the final race of that 1997 season. So basically EA didn't have enough time to implement the quad oval in time before the game's release. Then there is Sonoma Raceway, also known as Sears Point and Infineon Raceway for Heat 2002 and Dirt to Daytona. Heat 2002 features the 1998 to 2000 layout where the chute was mostly a long sweeping curve. Dirt to Daytona features the 2001 layout where the chute is the same as we know today. Both layouts have the Gillian's Island pit road section and the start-finish line front stretch going over the quarter-mile drag strip. Sonoma was being reconfigured in both 2001 and 2002. Heat 2002 released in June of 2001, and Monster Games obviously didn't have enough time to implement the new layout for Sonoma, and instead had to use the already existing layout they have for Heat 2000. Despite Dirt to Daytona releasing in November of 2002, apparently for some reason they didn't get in time to implement the new layout for 2002 for Sonoma, as they used the 2001 layout instead. NASCAR Thunder 2004 features both configurations for Homestead Miami Speedway, flat and bank Homestead. EA already had the 1997 and 2002 layout implemented into Thunder 2004's development. Unlike Atlanta, EA still managed to implement the 2003 to today layout for Homestead before the game's release in September of 2003. And instead of getting rid of flat Homestead, they still decided to keep it in the game instead and classify it as a fantasy track. In 2017, it was announced that NASCAR will have a roval race at Charlotte Motor Speedway for 2018. The track's layout has been changed a few times before we ended up with the one that we started off in 2018. But before the layout was finalized, there was a different layout that was only used and seen in NASCAR Heat 2. The layout is pretty much the same as the one we have now, except this one includes the looped section that NASCAR was supposed to have, but ultimately got removed for faster lap times. And this layout was part of the 2018 DLC for NASCAR Heat 2 that's no longer available to purchase today. For the 2010 roster for the game 2011, there were two drivers that had the number 7, Robbie Gordon and Danica Patrick. Both drivers are in the game, but they were differentiated by 7A and 7. But for some reason, Technics gave Robbie 7A and Danica Patrick just 7, despite Robbie being in a higher division than Danica at the time. It's not really confusing since you can tell who is who, even if you have the Sirius decal on the cars, but it's really pointless to have the letter A with Robbie's number 7 to tell the difference between him and Danica. And yes, I'm also aware that Michael Waltrip and Eric Almirola also share the same number, 51, and Almirola has A at the end of the number. And same scenario with David Ruderman and Ryan Truitt sharing 00. Makes sense since they're in the reverse order, but it's still unnecessary to tell the difference.
2 to go, all clear. Car high.
A lot of NASCAR fans may not recognize the studio's name, but if you ever played any game from the Skate series or any Need for Speed game from Underground 1 to The Run, and even the PS2 version of Hot Pursuit 2, you'll find the name Blackbox familiar to you. Blackbox used to be an independent studio that developed games for different publishers before EA purchased them to become its subsidiary studio in 2002. And one of the first few games that Blackbox developed was NASCAR 2001 for the PS1. Some say that they also developed the PS2 version, but there are more mentions of black bots in the PS1 version than they are in the PS2 version, which are almost or pretty much non-existent. You can say that NASCAR 2001 was just that beginning stone for black bots to develop racing games in general, that eventually developed games for a bigger racing franchise up until their demise. There has been various NASCAR games that have been released with extra content or have been re-released with extra content, known as special editions. Recently there has been different editions for 21 Misfire, Heat 5, and Heat 4 that you can pay extra for extra content. But there has also been special editions for older NASCAR games. Starting off with the collector's edition of NASCAR 98 and 99. NASCAR 98 had a collector's edition that was released in 1998, around the time of NASCAR's 50th anniversary as an organization. What this version of the game included was Richard Petty in a Dodge-style stock car, meaning the front end is meant to look like a Dodge, but this is still following the trend with the other cars in the game not having any manufacturer logos. And it also included a new track in the game, which was Darlington Raceway. The collector's edition of NASCAR 99 was released the following year in 1999. This version includes Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the game and Homestead Miami Speedway as a new track. But it also includes a second CD along with the game, and that is a music CD called NASCAR Rocks. NASCAR Rocks is included with 8 tracks in the CD, and you can play them in any device that allows you to play audio CDs, like your car radio. Both NASCAR Rumble and Thunder 2002 had a collector's edition label on their covers, but there is no extra content for those games, and they are as they were when they were released. They have that label because they were bundled with other games, being sold as part of a collector's edition pack. If you were to purchase NASCAR 2005 and NASCAR 06 in 2004 and 2005 respectively at a Walmart, you will be able to purchase the Walmart exclusive version of those games, which are just basically the same game, but it includes a sticker that has cheat codes that you can input in the game. And the same thing goes with NASCAR 07 and 08, though those two games are labeled as limited edition if you bought them at Walmart in 2006 and 2007, with slip-up covers. And yes, the HD version of NASCAR 08 also had a limited edition release that you can buy at Walmart as well. Though, the cheat code that was included on the PS2 version unlocks the Walmart track and driver, while the HD version just gives you the driver, as no fantasy tracks were ever made for the HD version of NASCAR 08. NASCAR 09 had a Best Buy exclusive that if you were to buy the game from a Best Buy in 2008, you will have two sided covers. The first cover will have Elliott Sadler, and he's also included on the game disc and on the game manual. And along with the cover, you will find a bonus sign that if you were to open the case and try to flip it over, you will find the other side of the cover containing Jeff Gordon, which was the main cover athlete for the game. NASCAR 14 had different pre-order bonuses that you can get depending where you pre-ordered the game. If you were to pre-order the game on either Target or Best Buy, you will get themed DLC cards that represent those stores respectively. Pre-ordering the game at Walmart will give you a 1/64 diecast. And if you pre-ordered the game at GameStop, you will get 4 DLC cards, one that's themed after GameStop, and 3 other cards that are themed by other games that Deep Silver has made, like Saints Row 4, Metro Last Night, and Dead Island. Thunder 2003 and 2004 each had a development oversight when it came to the Winston Cup logo. For obvious reasons, Winston had to be censored in the Cup Series logo, but in Thunder 2003, on the fantasy version of the Daytona Infield Road Course, there is a sign that has the uncensored version of the Winston Cup logo instead of just saying NASCAR Cup Series. The original logo was just used as a placeholder that eventually would have changed into the censor logo, which never happened. How this game still got an E rating? Whoever playtested this game didn't get to unlock this version of Daytona. EA Tiburon later censored it in Thunder 2004, but they didn't get to censor these two background menus in the same game. Additionally, you can also find uncensored Winston Cup logos in NR 2003 and Chicagoland Speedways as Victory Lane. Gran Turismo 5 was revealed in June of 2009 at E3 with a trailer. This was also around the time when NASCAR was announced to be in Gran Turismo 5. But along in that trailer, it included cars from the 2009 season. Examples that give it away are Tony Stewart's Old Spice paint scheme that he ran in 2009, Jimmy Johnson's Lowe's paint scheme that he ran in 2009, the car of tomorrow using the wing instead of the spoiler that got changed in midway through the 2010 season. Michael Waltrip originally planned to be in the game but got cut because he retired from full-time racing by 2010. Chevrolet still using the Impala SS nameplate for 2009 that eventually changed to just Impala in 2010, and a blank white square being utilized to censor the EA Sports logo as a contingency sponsor. Outside of modding or recreating paint schemes, this was officially the closest that we would have had the 2009 roster in a racing game, whether NASCAR was a core element or not. Say this for example, you plan to race as a driver and choose a scheme of the ones that they offer, but then change your mind and race as somebody else instead. But you left that previous driver in whatever paint scheme you left it on. Whatever paint scheme that is, it would appear in your race session. And if you try that with every driver in the game that has more than one paint scheme, those paint schemes will appear in the game, meaning you're choosing schemes for not just yourself, but also for the AI, which is possible to do in NASCAR Thunder 2002. You can also do this in Thunder 2003 and 2004, but it's only seen on exhibition races in Thunder 2003. So is Thunder 2004, but it's a mix of the two. Fairly inconsistent though. There's a total of 30 lightning challenges for you to do in NASCAR Thunder 2003, but there is one secret challenge that bumps that total to 31. The name of the lightning challenge is Owning the Title, and it's a shootout between Hendrick Motorsports drivers and Petty Enterprises drivers at Talladega Superspeedway. Unlocking it is not difficult, but it's very time consuming, and that is, you have to win 8 championships in career mode. Amount of laps, races, and difficulty do not matter, as long as the difficulty is between legend and veteran, which that is the legit way of doing it, unless if you're gonna go and source a 100% save file of the game. And no, you don't get anything after completing the challenge itself, just the sake of completing it. One thing that is mentioned in the video for the challenge, Rick Hendrick mentions that you can choose between any driver from Hendrick Motorsports or any driver from Petty Enterprises that are in the challenge.
You get to pick any one of the Hendrick or Petty cars, including one for me and one for Richard.
but you don't get to do that and race as Richard Petty instead. Only really seen from the game inside line to NASCAR 15 is the red flag. Majority of us, not just in NASCAR but also in every other form of motorsport, know what a red flag is. And Utechnix is really the only studio to officially implement the red flag in a game. And it will be displayed any game from the game inside line to NASCAR 15 if a crash is deemed too dangerous. But then remember, this is Utechnix we're talking about. Their crashes in these games and even the AI are as inconsistent as NASCAR officiating the rules and making calls. It all really comes down to luck to get the red flag if you know how to make a crash be over the top, if you know what I mean. Multiplayer for these games also had the red flag, but they're more predictable there than they are in single player, if you know what I mean. And no, the red flag doesn't work as intended, it just basically works like a yellow flag. This here is Cyberdale, which is just basically a video game fictionalized computer version of Dale Sr. It was mostly a way to promote the new technology that EA Sports had at the time to make their games, and also Cyberdale was used to market NASCAR 99 and 2000. The footage that was seen on the commercial of NASCAR 99 was also featured in NASCAR Revolution. Some NASCAR drivers have been featured on their own racing game, meaning that a game company will make a racing game with a driver's name on the title. Drivers include Richard Petty, Kyle Petty, Bill Elliott, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, and Carl Edwards. Richard Petty's Talladega was an arcade-style racing game that was released in 1984 and 1985 for the Atari 8-bit and Commodore 64 respectively. The game features Richard Petty and Talladega Super Speedway. At least what it's supposed to look like Talladega. This game was technically the first unofficial NASCAR racing game to be released, before NASCAR Racing 1994. Bill Elliott's NASCAR Challenge was a game developed by Distinctive Software and published by Konami, being their first and only NASCAR game that they've ever published. It was released in 1991 for the MS-DOS, Amiga, Macintosh, and the NES system. There was also another similar game called Bill Elliott's NASCAR Fast Tracks that was released for the Game Boy in 1991 by Konami. This was also the first officially NASCAR licensed game, but it's not based off an ongoing season that started with NASCAR Racing 1994. And this was the first NASCAR game to feature Daytona International Speedway, just a few years before Daytona USA existed. Kyle Petty's No Fear Racing was released in 1995 for the SNES. In the Japanese version of the game, the title was known as Circuit USA. Here are a few things that this game has that normally you wouldn't see in NASCAR games. At least non-spin-off games. Like different parts for you to purchase that you can upgrade your car, which one of them includes nitrous, a custom track editor that no officially licensed NASCAR game has featured it officially. Majority of the tracks in this game are road courses, even if it has names of real-life tracks that are actually ovals. Oh hey look, they predicted Chicago too. And for 10,000 in-game dollars, you can purchase your own crew chief. And not only that, you can select the gender of your crew chief. Believe me, I never thought this was even a thing. Jeff Gordon Says Racing was a game released in 1999 for the Game Boy and PC. The game takes place in the year 2012, and you can drive their interpretation of a next generation stock car against 39 other opponents on the PC version and 4 other opponents on the Game Boy version. There were also plans to port the game for the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1 that eventually were cancelled. Carl Edwards had plug-in games. Let me remind you, this, and to my knowledge, these two games are the reason why he never appeared in NASCAR 07 and 08. Jimmy Johnson's Anything with an Engine was released in 2011 for the PS3, Xbox 360, and Wii. To summarize this game, car-type racer, goofy-ass characters, and you're literally racing anything with an engine that you can find from the junkyard. Whenever you think of NASCAR movies, you might be thinking of either Days of Thunder or Talladega Nights. But what if I told you that those two movies have their own games? Days of Thunder has 2 games, one released in 1990 and another one released in 2011. The 1990 game was released on various platforms that were available at the time, and so was the 2011 game. The 1990 game was also loosely based from the movie that came out the same year, while the 2011 game was a spin-off of Days of Thunder and also to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the movie. But there are 2 versions of the 2011 Days of Thunder game, one for the Xbox 360 and the other one for the PlayStation 3. The Xbox 360 version is called Arcade Edition, and it contains fictional characters or drivers in the game. The PS3 version is called NASCAR Edition, and this one contains actual NASCAR drivers in the game, with manufacturer presence and paint schemes as well from the 2010 season. Both versions of the game also contain characters that were from the movie, and only the PlayStation 3 version received a physical release, and that version contained the game and also a Blu-ray version of the 1990 movie, given the PlayStation 3 was the only console at the time that could play Blu-ray movies. Talladega Nights Fast Track was a game released in 2006 that was based from the Talladega Nights movie, but it requires Flash to play the game, which is no longer really possible to play it today since the 2020 shutdown of Adobe Flash. We know that Gran Turismo 5 and 6 feature actual NASCAR stock cars, but there was also another Gran Turismo game that featured NASCAR. Kinda. That other GT game was Gran Turismo 2, and it has a 1999 Ford Taurus SHO. A racing modification can be applied to the Taurus that will make it look like a stock car, despite some inaccuracies that the car still has, like working lights and being front-wheel drive instead of rear-wheel drive, none of which you can change. A livery will also be applied to that racing modification, and it will depend which version of the game that you have. 1.0 releases of the game feature a Valvoline paint scheme that Mark Martin drove in the 1998 season. Later releases of Gran Turismo 2 feature a generic livery instead, as Polyphony couldn't secure the licenses to keep the Valvoline paint scheme in the game. First introduced in 2001, EA created fan challenges for their sports titles, including NASCAR. As far as what's known and what I could find on how the challenge works, is basically fans will go and compete against each other and see who can post the fastest qualifying lap time. Whoever wins will get $5,000 and will go on to the final round competing against Dale Jr. for $10,000. And a guy by the name of Derek Wood beat Jr. twice in 2002 and 2003. The most recent challenge from EA was back in 2007, known as the EA Sports NASCAR Craftsman Challenge. This one contains people competing against each other not just in person, but can also compete against each other online in two separate groups. On one group will compete against each other in person at select locations and select cities in the United States. The other group will compete against each other online on the Xbox 360 version of NASCAR 08. A total of 11 cities were chosen to have qualifying rounds where people will go in store and compete against each other, and whoever can post the fastest qualifying time in a span of 3 days, the winner of each of those cities will go down to Miami and compete for $10,000. Online tournaments were hosted in NASCAR 08, and the winners out of those tournaments were also flown down to Miami to compete against the in-store participants. And after 5 rounds of online virtual racing at NASCAR 08's Homestead Miami Speedway, then 21-year-old Brandon Coppinger was the winner of the tournament, winning $10,000.
Hey, Bobby, how do you get to the chase?
You know where they race modifieds? Start there. Then, you'll go past a lot of trucks.
Okay.
What am I, your tour guide? Beat it.
Easy, Kevin. Want to take home the title? You gotta get to the chase first. NASCAR 2005 Chase for the Cup. Rated E for everyone.
Just follow me.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
Here we go. Last lap. Last lap.
NASCAR Thunder 2003.
What you just saw was a trailer for NASCAR Thunder 2003 that could be found in other EA Sports games like Madden 2003 and NHL 2003. But what is interesting about the trailer, it's the song that it's playing in the background. I've been trying to do research on the song as to who made this song and what is the name of the song, but no answers could be found, not even more than 20 years later since that trailer was made. And it is also unknown exactly what was the intended use of the song, whether it was supposed to be just for this trailer or this was a cut song from NASCAR Thunder 2003 that was supposed to be an exclusive song, but for some reason or another didn't make the cut. We all know that Papyrus's last NASCAR game, and in general, was NR 2003. But before the company was shut down, and after when EA bought the exclusive NASCAR license, they had a game in development which was called NASCAR Racing 5. What's known about this game is that there is a prototype that dates back to December 10, 2003. Given that the prototype was found on an Xbox debug kit, it more than likely could have been an exclusive original Xbox game. Based on available gameplay videos and screenshots that we have online, the game was built up from NASCAR Racing 4 and Grand Prix Legends. And Grand Prix Legends was also another game that Papyrus made back in 1998, which in this prototype includes tracks from that game, which are 1967 versions of Kailami, Monza, Monaco, Mosport, Nürburgring, Spa-Francorchamps, and Zandvoort. At least the layout, since the tracks themselves are stripped down given that this is a tech demo. NASCAR Online had downloadable content starting in July of 2008 that included paint schemes and a new racetrack, which was Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, all of which were taken down sometime in 2010, and everything was considered to be lost until a YouTuber by the name of Rocker1999 uploaded a video on May 25th, 2022, showcasing the missing DLC. And thanks to Rocker1999, it's now possible to get that DLC again, and it can either be played on a JTAG or an RGH Xbox 360, or you can play it on the Xenia emulator. As of right now, it's not possible to get the DLC for the PS3 version today. It's only on the Xbox 360. Unlike NASCAR Online's DLC, this DLC for the game 2011 is completely lost. You could also say the same for NASCAR 14 and Inside Line, but there are alternatives to get that missing content on PC. And the same goes with NASCAR 15, as it is the oldest NASCAR game available that you can buy on Steam as of 2023. But the game 2011 was only released on consoles, and that DLC was the 2011 roster update. Remember, the game 2011 came out on March 2011 for the Xbox 360 and the PS3, containing the 2010 season. And the 2011 roster update came out in July of that same year. What was included on the DLC was the 2011 roster update with the new Car of Tomorrow from Bumper, some new drivers from lower divisions in the game, actual night time for some of the tracks in the game, repaved Daytona, and a new hardcore multiplayer mode. When the DLC originally came out in 2011, PS3 players got it for free, while Xbox 360 players had to pay for it. From what I researched, Technit's not only released an update for the game 2011, but also goes for every other game they have released afterwards from consoles, that not only it will delist the DLCs that the games had, but also make them inaccessible to access them in the game if you already purchased them. Unlike Xbox 360 players, it's easier for PS3 players to retain all of the DLCs for not just the game 2011, but also every other game that Technit has made. There have been times when a driver was sponsored by a video game, or a video game with GameStop, or by a video game company in either the Xfinity series or the Cup series. But there's a particular paint scheme in Gran Turismo 5 that's considered fantasy that almost raced in real life in the Cup series. And that was the Joey Logano Gran Turismo 5 GameStop livery. Originally, Joey was supposed to race in this paint scheme in the Martinsville Fall race in 2010, but unfortunately, that got replaced with just a GameStop livery instead, as this was supposed to promote Gran Turismo 5 when it was supposed to be released in early November, before it got delayed. As far as getting the car with delivery, people who pre-ordered this game at a GameStop were able to get it as a pre-order bonus. It's also possible to get the car through gift card tickets, even if you don't have the DLC installed, and that's saying especially when they have been gone for almost a decade. The chances are 1 in 23 through a 2010 gift card ticket, and 1 in 83 through a Toyota gift card ticket, neither of which are attainable under normal circumstances. This was also the only NASCAR stock car to never appear in Gran Turismo 6, and Joey did race the livery in real life, but it was in an Xfinity Series race at Texas Motor Speedway. There's a trailer for NASCAR 06 Total Team Control that it shows in its early state when it was originally called NASCAR 2006 Chase for the Cup. Following the same name from the previous game, it was still using the same game engine that the Thunder Series in 2005 used at that point, before EA Tiburon changed into the game engine that they used instead to the game that we know today. In the trailer, it showed more emphasis on Penske racing drivers than Hendrick Motorsports drivers, while also showcasing the early state of the Total Team team control feature. And it also shows Ryan Newman actually flipping the same way he did in the 2003 Daytona 500, unlike how they used Jimmy Johnson instead in the final game. Before NR 2003 and iRacing existed, there was a NASCAR simulator that people used back in 1997. Not necessarily something you will purchase for your own home, but it was something that you will go somewhere and experience it for yourself. And that was the Silicon Motor Speedway, which was the OG NASCAR simulator. Silicon Motor Speedway was located in different places like malls, and it also had a spot at Universal Studios Hollywood and at Daytona USA and Daytona International Speedway. SMS was a thing from 1997 to 2010, with 2 bankruptcies happening in between, one in 2001 and another one in its final year, which now makes it lost and completely forgotten in the past, even ever since when iRacing came to the scene and making it more obsolete. As for the simulation rigs, majority of them are pretty much gone, but there is a man by the name of Jack Dowell who has a few of the ones that are left and is planning to restore them. He even uses one of them as a simulation rig for iRacing. NASCAR had an animated show that lasted from 1999 to 2001 called NASCAR Racers. The show has a total of 2 seasons with a total of 26 episodes. The show not only released its own series of books, but it also released its own game back in 2000. It was released for the Game Boy Color and on PC. While it doesn't feature any drivers or cars from real life, since it is based out of the show, this is basically the only futuristic NASCAR game that exists with NASCAR in the title. A piece of cut content can be found on the files of Need for Speed Underground 2 that contains a sound for a NASCAR stock car. At some point during the development of Underground 2, Blackbox was likely to add a stock car in the game, even if it might seem an odd placement to have on a game that contains a car roster as Underground 2, and with the theme that it was going back in 2004. Only the sound file exists, as it is unknown exactly what body style was going to be used, if it was either from a Ford, a Chevy, or a Dodge, or maybe a Pontiac, even if they already left the sport at that point. Some NASCAR games have featured demos for you to play and decide whether you want to buy the game or not when it comes out. There have been a few rare CDs that feature a demo of a NASCAR game that's part of something else, or it's just a demo of itself. Like interactive CDs featured on souvenir programs, like this one from the 2002 Daytona 500, which features a demo for NR 2002. But interestingly, there is a Napa edition of NASCAR Heat 2000, which is just a demo and not a full game. What it featured in the demo was the ability to only drive as Michael Waltrip, and to drive on 2 tracks that were featured in the demo. The purpose of this was to promote Napa joining the Cup Series in 2001 as a sponsor for Michael Waltrip, who was joining Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. This was also technically the only appearance Michael Waltrip had on the original NASCAR Heat series. One thing shown at the end of the demo is an advert for NASCAR Heat 2002 that was originally called NASCAR Heat 2001 season, and that it was also supposed to be released on May of 2001, and it was likely delayed to the release date that we know as June 18, 2001. NASCAR Sim Racing not only had 1, but 2 different demos. One which is basically it's just a normal demo with the Cup Series and 2 tracks that you can race on, and another demo that only features the 2006 Dodge Charger for you to drive on 3 tracks. This is also the only instance in NASCAR Sim Racing feature production cars, as the full release only featured the Cup Series, the Busch Series, and the Truck Series. And it also features its own cockpit view camera, though the interior is straight from a Dodge Viper and the tachometer is straight from a stock car. The intent of this demo was likely to promote the Dodge Charger, being brought back in 2005 as a 4-door. I'm not going to mention every piece of cut content for every NASCAR game ever, but I'm going to mention some pieces of cut content that originally were going to be in some games that didn't make it. NR 2003 has some unused insults, as the spotter would say to the player if they commit something dumb. which can always be brought back through modding.
Now I know why you got canned by your old team. I guess you really are as dumb as you look. Oh, now that was a stupid thing to do. You know what? I think this air wrench is smarter than you. Congratulations! You just set the sport back 30 years with that move.
There's also an unused line that the spotter will tell the player to get ready for a green-white checker finish. This was originally planned for a Truck Series expansion that Papyrus had planned for NR 2003 that got cancelled once EA bought the exclusive NASCAR license.
Get ready for a green-white checkers finish here.
There's also various lines from various drivers that didn't make it to the game in Thunder 2004.
John Andretti.
John Andretti.
John Andretti.
John Andretti.
Kerry Earnhardt.
Kerry Earnhardt.
Kerry Earnhardt.
Kerry Earnhardt.
Mike Wallace.
Mike Wallace.
Mike Wallace.
Mike Wallace.
PJ Jones.
PJ Jones.
PJ Jones.
PJ Jones.
Tony Raines.
Tony Raines.
Tony Raines.
Tony Raines.
There's even some paint schemes that didn't make it into Thunder 2003. Here's a massive oversight that EA forgot to do for the night version of Sonoma Raceway. All of the pit boxes are from Thunder 2002, but there's a particular pit box from a certain driver that's not in this game that was also supposed to be in Thunder 2002, and that was Andy Houston. Why is it in Thunder 2004? My question exactly. The final NASCAR games from EA was NASCAR 09 for an ongoing season and kart racing in general, but kart racing wasn't supposed to be that final game. EA was supposed to make a NASCAR 10. It's unknown exactly how long the game was in development, but it was in development before EA canceled to renew their exclusivity deal with NASCAR. And so far, what's pretty much known about NASCAR 10 are 3 screenshots that were taken by Ross D.P. Harris and posted on Twitter on October 4th, 2017. The 3 screenshots contain early renders of tracks that were going to be in the game, which are Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Bristol Motor Speedway, and an unnamed Coliseum-type fantasy track. The Coliseum-type racetrack could be an inspiration that was taken from Langhorne Speedway, a track that was closed down in 1971. And the HD intro of NASCAR 09 is probably the closest resemblance that we could consider that we have seen this track in action in some way. And again, that's the only evidence that it exists for NASCAR 10 with those 3 screenshots. There's no gameplay videos, more photos, or even a playable alpha or beta of the game. Unless if anyone has these things or have more information, that's pretty much the only evidence that we have for NASCAR 10. Whether or not kart racing was supposed to replace NASCAR 10, that's debatable, given that kart racing is more of a spin-off rather than just be serving as a replacement.
Wow.
Some NASCAR games have made appearances in other forms of media, like television and movies. Various games made an appearance on a Sports Center segment in the mid-2000s. Gameplay from NR 2002 was seen on the 2003 movie Kart Racer, and a NASCAR arcade machine was seen in Talladega Nights, with NASCAR 06 gameplay. The Jeff Gordon NASCAR School was seen in Gran Turismo 5 as part of its special events. This is where Jeff Gordon would teach you how to drive a stock car and also partake in events that will earn you in-game credits, and also you will gain experience. And yes, Polyphony did Jeff Gordon dirty in this introduction cutscene. Rocket League has introduced NASCAR in the form of fan packs. The 2021 pack contained a Gen 6 car as well as some drivers that were competing in that season. Same situation in 2022, including the next gen car, along with drivers that competed in that season. Those 2 fan packs have been released on different dates with different drivers and have came and went. Part of FOMO content. If you race as certain Cup drivers in Dirt to Daytona and make a pit stop, you will notice that your pit crew is wearing the wrong uniforms. Some of the uniforms are either with the wrong colors, outdated, or with the wrong sponsor. There have been NASCAR games before and after Chase for the Cup 2005 that had a career mode, and even some people might consider career modes of other games to be as good or better than Fight to the Top. But Fight to the Top was a career mode model that EA utilized from Chase for the Cup 2005 to the PS2 version of NASCAR 09. Before NASCAR 07, Fight to the Tops in NASCAR 2005 and 06 will start off with a prologue sequence. The first iteration having you compete against Ryan Newman and Dodge Vipers in the streets of New York City, and the second iteration having you to reenact a loosely based 2004 Pepsi 400. Fight to the Top isn't the first career mode that makes you start from the bottom to the Cup Series, but one of the things that you can do is to start your own racing team in any division in the game, and from 06 onwards, you can buy an existing race team. Fight to the Top was later renamed to Earn Your Stripes in NASCAR 08 and Chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup in NASCAR 09. When starting Fight to the Top for the first time in NASCAR 07, you will get this screen whether you want to do the All-State qualifiers or not. What these qualifiers are just basically time trials that Kenny Wallace will give you to do. And depending how good you do on these time trials, you will either get a contract for the Truck Series, the Busch Series, or the Cup Series. This is a way of skipping the modified series if you don't want to start from the very bottom. Something that you really couldn't do until NASCAR Heat 4 and 5 allow you to choose whatever series you want to start off with in your career mode. What I mean with this is basically the fact that you will see a lot of Dodge sponsorship from 2005 Chase for the Cup to NASCAR 07. This was a segment on NASCAR Race Hub that aired in 2021 that went over the history of NASCAR games up to that point. Though, the segment doesn't cover everything in the history of NASCAR gaming because it mostly just covers about iRacing, the beginnings of Papyrus, and EA Sports. Yes, this is your racing agent. Yes, that is his name, apparently. And yes, this is the guy that's going to give you messages or phone calls revolving about contracts, drivers not being happy with you, charity events, fans, you name it, from Chase for the Cup 2005 to the PS2 version of NASCAR 08. He's then replaced by Jeff Gordon in the PS2 version of NASCAR 09. This is the only game to do this, but NASCAR 2000 had interactive pit stops. You time the buttons right, you basically will get a better pit stop, which majority of you, I assume, didn't get it perfectly. And it's a good thing EA never brought it up again, or any other developer had ever thought of doing this. You may have seen in some instances, whether if it's in the intro or in the Beat to Heat challenges, that you have seen a Heat 2 logo in Dirt to Daytona. Originally, Dirt to Daytona was supposed to be called Heat 2, even if the order would have been out of place in terms of titles. And it would have been confusing 15 years later if Dirt to Daytona was called Heat 2. Those logos still remain in the game because Monster Games didn't have enough time to replace them with the Dirt to Daytona logo.
Well, we really like the styling and the personal safety system.
And that 5-star safety rating is awesome, but...
Well, how about a test drive?
That's a bunch of them. Oh, my goodness. Bust us out there, Sammy.
Okay, hold your line. Hold your line.
Middle is good. Shoot the middle. Turn the bottom. You got it. You got it. Oh, no.
NASCAR The Game 2011.
Okay, buddy, you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Rated E for everyone.
Alright, I just wanted to say to just like the video, subscribe if you're new, and comment what you thought of the video, because this video really took almost a year to complete. Not kidding with you. Mainly for two things, one of them being my life. Things that have been going on outside of YouTube, and yeah, let's just put it like that. The other half is basically I wanted to make this video as perfect as possible, with little to no mistakes, and there might be some misinformation, which I apologize for. Feel free to correct me, but this took a long time to just get it right. And hey, and if you have any information or just basically any topics that I never mentioned in this iceberg, go ahead and mention it. There might be not just information for me to know that's interesting, but also for anyone else that wants to know anything. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I'm out of here. I'm getting tired. I'm going to sleep. Motorsport Games really need to lose their license, man. And hey, there might have been a lot of things that I got from EA specifically in this iceberg, but that's literally because I could find more things coming from EA than any other studio. And believe me, I tried. But it is what it is.